Uh, Good afternoon. Alvin, it's a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for taking on time and talking to CRN today. Probably we would first like to understand from you about the cybersecurity trends that you are witnessing when you interact and meet customers in Asia Pacific and Japan region, and when you meet the CIOs or the CISOs. What's your observation of the market, like where we are heading to in terms of the trends that you are witnessing in the market?
Well, to begin with, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to you and to speak to your audience about what you've just asked. So what I've encountered and what I've seen is that CIOs currently are under a lot of pressure to look at how do they build a robust cybersecurity posture for their organization. They are under heavy scrutiny not only by their managers but also by the boardroom, because now cybersecurity has already arrived at the level whereby boardroom members are actually taking a lot of time and attention to look at how and what is done to rectify and to minimize the risk exposure of an organization. As a result of that, one of the first most obvious gap that I find that some of them have is the ability to articulate the value of cybersecurity to the boardroom level, meaning for them to step away from being a technologist to become a business technologist and to articulate the value of cybersecurity and its impact to the business, to drive business outcome or to preserve business outcome, whether is it for cyber resiliency or business continuity or protection of the company's reputation or to drive greater efficiency. That's something that I find that they are starting to come forth and try to articulate the value of cybersecurity from that standpoint. But that is still not to say that cybersecurity is being driven by some of the industries by compliance, whereby the need to be compliant because of some requirement in that particular industry, whereby the lack of compliance might lead to the company not getting a renewal of license to practice in that country again. So there are various reasons why cybersecurity is actually driving this. And the other thing that I find prevalent among many of the executives as well is how do you measure the effectiveness of cybersecurity? So the whole matrix, there is no industry standard like the way they will look at a dashboard or a benchmark, to say that this is good and this is bad, because it's very subjective. I remember speaking to a company in New Zealand whereby they say that if they are down, if their IT infrastructure is down for 4 days, it's not a big impact. It's because they are in a primary industry. They look at sheep's farms, or they look at wine and wine manufacturing. So it's not critical. Whereas compared to a bank, right, 10 minutes down, and there's a lot of issues around loss of revenue, investigation, what went wrong, and so on and so forth. So the ability to respond, right, varies, and the time dependency of apt or on-time response or prompt response varies from industries to industries.
Okay, so looking at these market trends, and when you are meeting with these business decision makers, what sort of innovation that Forcepoint has brought to the market? Because we know there are n number of solutions available in the market, a lot of competition happening, especially if you look at the market like India. There are you can't even count the kind of players there are playing in the market. So what makes Forcepoint stand out in this competitive landscape as such?
So in order for me to fully contrast against the Forcepoint value proposition and what makes us stand out, let's first talk about what's actually happening in the market today. Many of the security vendors are very focused on the whole threat mitigation mindset. It becomes a constant rat race of building the better defense, building the better mousetrap to prevent a certain attack from coming into the organization. At the end of the day, you will always have a situation whereby somebody will outdo you, and then that race is a constant run. It's like a hamster running around a treadmill, so you're always running in circles, chasing after your tail. There is no end behind that because somebody will always come up with something better. At Forcepoint, the innovation that we're focused on is around human behavioral cybersecurity. And what that means essentially is to apply a risk score to every individual within the organization based on the way he behaves, based on the way that he interacts with data. And the reason why this is significant and important today is because when you look at the way an organization is structured today, it is very fluid, it's very porous. With digital transformation embracing a lot of businesses, we find that the traditional concept of a perimeter is becoming porous. Although a perimeter firewall still has a place within an organization, but it is becoming porous. Companies are increasingly challenged to prevent a cyber attack from coming in, and that's why I think we are seeing more and more attacks happening today, because they are using perimeter on a new business model, and as a result of that, not doing so well. Whereas if we take on the innovation about a human-centric behavior and cybersecurity strategy with the individual risk profile, you then move on to a risk adaptive protection kind of concept. And what that is essentially is to apply security when the person is behaving in a way that's not compliant to the corporate requirements or not compliant to the corporate policies. And this is where you can dynamically even apply these policies to that person to mitigate and to prevent him from doing something not so smart, or doing something that could cause the company loss of revenue or loss of reputation.
Okay, so the recently the company came up with this dynamic edge protection platform as part of your converged security platform that you have. So do you think, looking at the complex digital challenges which organizations, enterprises, as well as the government agencies are facing, this will be able to kind of bridge the gap or eliminate the gap and reduce the redundancies which are there in when they are managing their security posture as such?
That's a good question. If we look at today's environment, it all started some time ago where they talk about infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and now software as a service. And then that as a service phrase got spun off into desktop as a service. And right now, I believe I saw in an IDC report is anything as a service. So if you think about our dynamic edge solution, it's like security as a service for an organization, whereby it is all the different kinds of security solutions cobbled together on the cloud to provide organization the necessary security that they need to interact with this cloud. This cloud becomes a hub and spoke for organizations to have the direct access to other applications on the cloud while maintaining cybersecurity and maintaining clean pipe for an organization. The key benefits around that is smaller footprint, greater scalability, lower costs, move from a pay up front to a better management of companies' expenses from a CAPEX to an OPEX model kind of mindset. It would appeal to the CFO. It would appeal to organizations looking at managing their costs better, because cybersecurity has a very notorious reputation of constantly demanding money from the finance to constantly protect the organization. So.
Okay, so how, since you are kind of promoting a lot on the behavior-based security, to how according to you that this will prove better than the legacy paradigms that we have that used to focus on protecting the infrastructure as such?
Okay, that's another very interesting question. Now, I won't call the perimeter security is outdated. It has its place. It all depends on the way that a business is structured. If the company is at the early days of digital transformation, they will still tend to look at perimeter security to maintain security for the organization. But as they progress, as they start to collaborate with other players in the market to drive their value proposition to their customers, they need to rethink their cybersecurity. But having said that, we also need to bear in mind that the whole purpose of having security, right, in whatever shape or form they may be, is to discourage the hacker from attacking the organization. the goal of every cybersecurity professional is to make every attempted attack on them as painful, difficult, and expensive as possible. Hackers are motivated by either financial or ideological reasons. But if you make that attempted attack too difficult or too expensive for them, they will abandon the cause to attack you, and they go and look at somebody else who is less, less robust in their security posture. Having said that, behavioral cybersecurity, right, its value is in its ability to identify abnormal behavior by the person or by the entity. And the value of that is that when you identify an abnormal behavior, you are able to then infer that something is wrong, either for nefarious reason or even for unintentional activities. This could be your indication of compromise. In threat, they always talk about indication of compromise, right? So in this instance, it becomes your indication of compromise as a precursor to a full-blown potential attack to the organization, giving you a red flag to investigate on what is going on. And that's the value of that. But if you look at it from another side, we had an interesting case whereby with another one of our customers, and this happened in the US, this individual came back to the office on Sunday, and because they were monitoring, right, number one, it was unusual for him to come back to the office on a Saturday or Sunday. He spent time logging on to his computer, digging for information and so on, right? So that alerted the IT professionals to rush down to see what he was trying to do, thinking that it was something nefarious. And what happened was that we actually uncovered that he was actually trying to take his own life. He was trying to commit suicide. His abnormal behavior alerted IT to save his life. So if you think about it, it actually could be used from another standpoint as well. The other areas of looking at it from behavioral analytics is to look at your company's persistent type of non-compliant behavior. If you have a spectrum of information on your employees, on the types of activities that they do which is not corporate compliant, you can hone in your training to help them correct those bad habits, those bad cybersecurity habits. So some people may be very click happy. Some people may be, very, I like to go and download free stuff and so on and so forth. When you pick all this up, then you can tailor a cybersecurity awareness program to address those issues instead of having a generic program whereby you put people to sleep and they think that it's not relevant to them.
Okay. So was this the reason or logic behind launching or coming up with this X Labs division of Forcepoint, which is kind of will transform or augment the cyber security solutions, which will be based on or will be built on the behavioral intelligence that you are looking at?
Forcepoint started X Labs because we wanted to be the first company in the world to really analyze and find the data points around human behavior and abnormal human behavior. At the end of the day, we are creature of habits. We will always do things in a certain fashion. We will always do things at a certain time. When we deviate from that normal pattern, we know that something is not right, something is wrong, or something is unusual is taking place. And X Labs is this organization in Forcepoint that looks at identifying the different use cases for specific nefarious activities, whereby they whereby they use data scientists, they use psychologists, they use data model to actually understand and to analyze the data and correlate the data to understand the little telltale signs or the precursor that would lead on to a specific activity. A simple example would be if somebody is planning to do something nefarious, one of the things he would often do is to hide. There'll be a whole effort around masking and hiding and preventing himself from being detected. And that's when you know that the person is looking at hiding a specific activity that he's planning.
So looking at the current hybrid IT environment, how do you think it will help you deliver automated or kind of risk adaptive security solutions to the market?
When you talk about hybrid environment, I assume that you mean companies embracing cloud computing,
Right.
looking at outsourcing managed services. They are looking at software as a service and so on and so forth, outsourcing that as well. I think companies right now are looking at focusing on their core competency and delivering on that so that they maximize their value proposition to their customers. Now, having described that, the role of cybersecurity in that entire arena, because now that arena is now a collaborative platform whereby data is residing not only on-prem but also on the cloud, the behavioral cybersecurity model is one whereby it's able to detect when an individual is behaving nefariously either on-prem or whether the person is behaving nefariously somewhere else trying to access data from the cloud. It basically gives you an insight about the sort of behavior an individual has. And that's one of the key value behind that, because knowing what is normal, then it's easier for you to identify what is abnormal, and for that then to be a red flag for you to decide how do you want to manage and mitigate that particular activity or behavior exhibited by that individual.
Okay. Since Forcepoint has taken the lead in the industry to promote and take the behavior-based security solutions to the market, who, according to you, will be the early takers of your dynamic edge protection kind of solution in terms of vertical industry, according to you? Who will be able to leverage it earlier than the rest of the industries?
Okay. I foresee that there are two types of organization who can probably take advantage of this. But, and in order to understand, to answer that question effectively, we need to again go back to look at the digital transformation journey. If a company is just starting out on its digital transformation journey, right, what's happened over there is that they are very focused on automation, on efficiency, on effectiveness, on using proficiency to drive more mileage, to drive more revenue for the organization, and therefore their cybersecurity posture will be a bit different from a digital disruptor who is already fully matured, who is very fluid, who's very open, who's very dynamic, and therefore they will most likely be the most prone candidate to take this on, because they are looking at efficiency, they are looking at minimizing loss of intellectual property for the organization, they are looking at maximizing availability, they are looking at ways of protecting their intellectual property and at the same time protecting their brand equity. But then at the same time, the people who are driving these digital disruptors are people who are highly skilled, who have access to a lot of information and data, and are also people who are creating new intellectual property for the organization. And as a result of that, while they are an asset to their organization, they are also a liability if they are not monitored or if they are not managed appropriately. So that's one category of people that I foresee would actually look at this. Another category of organizations who will be looking at these are those companies who have a lot of highly sensitive information. Okay. So banks, for example, military, for example, whereby the whole discussion around monitoring and observing how people are using the information and to ensure that they do not exploit the information is a commonplace in the corporate culture.
So, like banking, don't you think that like highly distributed organizations like retail or healthcare or financial institutions which are distributed across the geographies will be able to leverage it much better way than some of the conventional industries?
You are right, but right now we are having the main obstacle around that is mindset versus solution availability. Okay. You know, they have to grapple with the whole concept about data privacy as well, and also with having to implement this across this vast environment. It's still a new idea, right? And not every organization is ready to embrace this.
Okay. So coming to another aspect of this platform which has been launched, like leveraging this security platform's integration capabilities, you have created a technology partner ecosystem. So how this is going to further help in the direction in which you are already embarked on that journey? So how it will help customers kind of delivering the integrated solutions to the customers as such?
Today, partners are having a hard time battling on an existing matured cybersecurity market whereby margins are thin, products are commoditized, and whereby the ability to value add is reducing. With moving on to the behavioral analytics cybersecurity solution, it's a whole new world. with a whole new bunch of opportunities for customers to really embrace and explore, whereby consulting plays a big role in it, contextualizing and customizing the solution to the business and aligning the solution to how a business is structured and mapping business unique scenarios where they would deem as non-compliant, which is not an out-of-the-box type solution, is required. So there's new opportunities for a partner to really take advantage of that and to embrace that. The way I'm looking at it right now, many organizations, despite of how much money they have spent, are still sharing with me that they don't feel secured. Hopefully, when we bring the business case to life around the value of the business analytics, around behavioral analytics, I beg your pardon, they would appreciate and understand the value that they actually can bring on many, many folds, building a corporate culture, identifying indication of compromise, identifying precursors to a potential threat, preventing insider threat, preventing data exfiltration, and so on and so forth. At least these are potential solutions that requires a lot of alignment to the business, which requires a lot of skills and a lot of resources to help a customer fully exploit and fully customize the solution to their environment. By having described that, I'm not saying that it is complex. It hinges on a clear understanding of the business model, on how the business operates, the business workflow, what is their value proposition, what they deem as important to the company and important to their customers, and then using this as a strategy to mitigate and to ensure that they have availability, they have service availability, they mitigate against extraction of data, they identify issues before they actually become a full-blown problem. So yes, there will be opportunities for customers to take advantage of that.
So do you agree that the creation of this human-centric technology partner ecosystem will enable customers to achieve their digital transformation outcomes much faster way?
We recently conducted a survey with Frost & Sullivan, and India was one of the markets we actually did a survey, and the IT decision makers actually came back to share with us that if you are thinking about embarking on digital transformation, you cannot exclude cybersecurity. So essentially, cybersecurity is a critical part of a company's digital transformation journey.
Okay, but how this will, with the help of your partner ecosystem that you have already kind of created, especially looking at this behavioral-based cybersecurity, will help in, with the customers will be able to realize this outcome faster, rather in comparison to the conventional way.
We believe it will help the customers to realize their need for, and the ability to build a robust security posture definitely faster.
So any sort of special efforts being made to enable your partners in this direction, looking at, because obviously it's not a conventional way of doing business or offering solutions to the customers. So any specific channel program being run or devised so that your partners are trained, certified, so that they can reach out to customers with your solution and address their requirements?
Okay. In my last discussion with my colleagues from the US around how do we work with our partners, so there are two levels of partnerships that we have. One is to resell our solution and to look at how do we integrate the solution together to drive greater benefit for the customer, is the accumulation of benefits because of the integration of the solution, and secondly is the deployment of the solution. Forcepoint will not be focused on building a professional services practice. We have a professional services practice, but the whole purpose of that professional services is to identify the different use cases for the implementation of the solution, and then to provide that to partners who want to make that as part of their practice to leverage on to deliver value with the Forcepoint solution to their customer base. So these are two main programs that we're looking at to help our partners to drive this into to drive our partner community to deliver value to our customers.
Okay. So lastly, Alvin, I'd like to know can all this new approach which the Forcepoint is taking the industry, can this be seen as the company's commitment to transform the fundamental approach to cybersecurity, which by wherein you are looking to understand the behavior of users and then offer the solutions?
I think it stems more than just our desire to transform. It's also the desire of company to find new ways to safeguard themselves. I mean, Albert Einstein said that insanity is to think that by doing the same thing you can get different results. So going on a threat mitigation pathway with all the things that's happening with threat mitigation, we are still seeing an increasingly number of attacks that companies are experiencing. Our intent is to provide an alternative solution for companies to look at to mitigate effectively against cyber attacks by looking at abnormalities, which is a dynamic thing that they can track and monitor and put a weightage upon in their organization to prevent a breach or to prevent non-compliant activities or nefarious activities from taking place.
Okay. So, all right, thank you, Alvin. Thank you for taking out time and sharing the insights with CRN India.
Thank
It was
you
a
very
pleasure
much.
talking to you.
It's my pleasure as well.
Thank you once again.